Hello and welcome back. We're going to do something a little differently today, and we'll do this from time to time. We're going to pause just for one day our journey through the text of A Course in Miracles, which naturally will still be there tomorrow. It can wait for today. And let's focus on a very important topic of conversation that has been coming up for a number of you. And I'm aware of this because of your questions that you have asked here in this comment thread. So thank you for that. This is my aim, is to create a space for dialogue and for some sincere inquiry, because it should come up. So thank you to those of you who have asked the questions. I know that there are a number of people watching worldwide that are wondering the same thing. So this is one of the things that frequently comes up at the end of a broadcast where I thank you for joining me and all of that. It's that asking these questions is so beneficial because you never know who on the other side of the world needs to know the same information, but is not asking for whatever reason. And you are doing not only yourself, but also those folks a tremendous favor. So thank you to those of you who have asked the very important and very frequent question on the path: how do I actually hear my inner teacher? How do I hear the Holy Spirit? Let's talk about that today. We're used to hearing the ego's voice. This is the voice that tells us that we're never enough, that we suck, we're scum, and sometimes it tells us we're the greatest person in the entire world and we're better than everyone else. But it's always chattering. It's always in opposition to something or someone. It's never unified, and it's never loving. And this is the voice that we listen to. We're accustomed to it. And it's the voice that tells us that we're always doing something wrong. It's the voice that makes us feel small. It's the voice that makes us feel superior to somebody the next moment. It's the voice that makes us feel separate from our brother. And we're so accustomed to it that sometimes it seems like it will not shut up. And here we are presented with a thought system that aims to turn the perception of the world right side up. You heard that right. To turn the perception of the world right side up, 180 degrees opposite from the way we see it now. A complete reversal in the thought system. If you think about what that actually means, it's total. And it can seem rather daunting. It can seem rather daunting because moment to moment, we've got the ego's voice telling us that we need to do this, we need to do that. Everything calls for our attention. It clamors for our attention. The dog clamors for our attention. Work needs our attention. There's housework and chores to do around the house. Something needs to be repaired. And then there's the modern distraction, major distraction of email and social media and all of that. And yes, it's more convenient to attach documents and send them email than it was to send them via regular mail back in the day, the not too distant past. Yes, it's convenient, but it's also a time sink. And it's just one of those things in our daily lives that demands our attention. So with our attention being pulled this way and that, how do we listen to our inner teacher? It's a great question. How do we actually listen to the voice for God, our inner teacher, the Holy Spirit, when we're not used to doing it? It's the perfect question for this path, because the number one thing that we do here with A Course in Miracles is get in touch with our inner teacher, learn to listen to our inner teacher's guidance. All right. So I can share with you from my own experience in this world that I am just as invested, and I have spent so much time invested in the values of this world. I can relate to those of you who are heavily in the thick of it. I have one of those very expensive and time-consuming degrees that I've framed, and it's just sitting over here. I haven't hung it on the wall, not this time, but I have one of those expensive doctorate degrees. I've invested plenty in the values of the world. And one of the things that's very interesting in my own experience with this is, while I found the material that I studied in school interesting intellectually, it didn't satisfy me at my core, and I was miserable the entire time. And when I thought about a career, this was law school, by the way, I have a JD. So it's a doctorate degree. And happily, I never sat for the bar exam. So to my beautiful, lasting satisfaction and great relief, I am not an attorney. Thank God. All right, if you're an attorney, you can laugh at that, right? Because it wasn't something that I thought was going to make me happy. At one point I did, but I quickly realized, no, I can't spend 40, 50 years of this lifetime doing this. There's something else out there for me. And you know what? That's my inner teacher talking. When you're being led away from something that makes you miserable, who's talking, right? I did not acknowledge that at the time, that that was the Holy Spirit speaking to me. Yet I just knew, I just deep down knew. So how do you cultivate this knowing? Well, the number one obstacle to any course student, is the attempt to understand these teachings on an intellectual basis. On an intellectual level, one could spend an entire lifetime racking one's brain, attempting to figure out the sheer simplicity of non-duality, which is beyond words, but it can be boiled down to exactly two words, each of them one single syllable. God is. And we've said it many times before, and we'll say it again. It's simple. We complicate things. And we're so used to valuing the intellect. We have expensive degrees that value nothing but the intellect and mental problem solving and gymnastics and figuring out 85 different solutions to every scenario. There are at least 85. There are 185. It's mental problem solving and gymnastics, and it's what if this, then that, and clarifications and subdivisions and further divisions, classifying, breaking things down into supposed made up component parts. We're so used to that. How do we hear a different voice instead? Well, attempting to intellectually understand these teachings before you put them into practice leads to frustration, doesn't it? We're invited at the beginning of the workbook for students to simply do the day's exercises. And it does not matter if you believe them. which is very important, isn't it? It doesn't matter if you believe them or think that they're true or believe that they may even have an inkling of truth or a shred of truth to them. We're simply asked to give our best effort in doing them, in putting them into practice. We don't have to understand them. You don't have to believe them. And again, you don't have to understand this on an intellectual, rational, thinking mind basis. It's beyond that. So what do? We actually let that go. Forgive and release. Forgive and release. Spirituality is understood by us experientially. Yes, it's important to understand ideas intellectually, but you don't have to do that before you begin to practice them. How do we know this? Well, it's by our practical application that we have the experience that these ideas are true. We learn it experientially. That's the most important thing, is having the experience. This is the way, if you want proof, that you prove it to yourself. I don't prove anything to you. I never will. You, however, will prove it to yourself. Our experience shows us that these ideas are true. So, to the extent that you're able to drop this pressing desire to iron fist grasp these ideas intellectually before you start off on the journey, I invite you to consider just releasing that grip. Spirituality is about learning to relax and trust. So we're all learning to relax and trust our inner teacher. When I first started practicing A Course in Miracles, I just started talking to the Holy Spirit. I just started talking to him as though he were another dude. I mean, really, a dialogue that would look to an outside observer like I was talking to someone else. That's what it would sound like in my mind. And I still talk to the Holy Spirit that way. I just started doing it. And I think that's a very, very strong message for all of us, is to just start doing it, because we learn experientially. And the academics of all of this, the metaphysics, all of the intellectual stuff actually catches up to us. We begin to understand it. Why? Because we've had the visceral experience of learning it experientially. That's how it's done. And if you happen to get all of this material on an intellectual thinking basis, great. Great. If you don't worry about it. That's actually going to come. And then if you just start off doing it and get the intellectual understanding later, then you'll realize, well, okay, that confirms something. Great. Fantastic. It's not what's most important. You'll know that. So one of the things that I find comes up for people when it comes to listening to our inner teacher is that people aren't necessarily aware that their inner teacher is talking to them. So let's be very clear about one thing. The call goes out to you and all of us all of the time. The question is, are we listening? So what are we looking for? Because the response is instant, it's automatic, and it's guaranteed. Learn to relax and trust. It's instant, it's automatic, and it's guaranteed. Learn to relax and trust. The response of the Holy Spirit to your call, to your request, is instant, it's automatic and it's guaranteed. So how do you recognize it? Great question. It comes in many forms. Not all of us will actually hear an audible voice in our mind, in our own native language. It might work that way for some people, but that is not the only way that you can hear your inner teacher. Your inner teacher speaks to you in many different ways and makes use of every single thing that appears to exist in this world in order to do so. So you may get a feeling. This happens quite a bit for me. I'll just get a feeling, a hunch, a gut feeling, an intuitive hit, something that you cannot actually explain intellectually, rationally with words, because they fall short. But you just know. What's the parallel to that? We just know God. Knowledge is beyond all of this. Awakening beyond all of this. Reality is beyond all of these conventions, including language. But we just know. So you may experience an intuitive hit where you simply know. That's your inner teacher speaking to you. We may see things in the world around us that remind us of something and generate one of these aha moments, or a deja vu, perhaps, or a feeling. It could be a bird flying in the sky that reminds us of something. Maybe we're driving down the highway and we see a billboard that triggers something deep within us. It could be anything. It could be something that we read. It could be something that we hear someone else say. Perhaps it's something that I've said on this broadcast, and perhaps it's something that I will say on this broadcast, or any other teacher, or someone on the radio that's actually selling a product, but what they say hits home for you somehow. There are many things that simply appear, and suddenly one day things could certainly appear to have shifted. They appear to have changed and transformed into something entirely beneficial. There are many ways that our inner teacher speaks to us. What's the easiest way to hear? With a calm, serene, and tranquil mind. With as calm and quiet a mind as you can possibly get in the present circumstance. This is why meditation is a thing in world spirituality. A Course in Miracles makes use of it in the form of daily practice activities in the workbook. That this is something, whether you're going through the workbook or not, that you can cultivate. Now, if you feel, and often we do in the modern world, we feel that we don't have time to meditate, there's simply not enough time. You have your next breath, we hope. A very beneficial and powerful meditation can, in fact, be as short as one single breath. And here's what you do. You just get as comfortable as you can. You don't have to lie down or go off into a dark, quiet room. You can do this right in the midst of checking email if you want to. It's a matter of bringing your mind into the present moment and becoming aware of one cycle of breath. Pay attention to your inhale, and then pay attention to your exhale. You might watch the breath, feel the breath come into your physical body and leave your physical body just once. And while you're doing it, just let the other thoughts go for a couple seconds. They'll be back. And when you do this for one breath, you're cordially invited to do it for a second breath. And having done a second breath, you're invited to do a third, and so on. So we all have time to do this. there is always time, because that's what time's for, to get in touch with our inner teacher. And however you talk to your inner teacher, I invite you to keep that dialogue up and keep it going, and to make the effort to calm your mind as much as you possibly can. Now, when you ask your inner teacher questions, it's important also for us to pay attention to how we feel. When anything at all makes you feel genuinely uncomfortable or afraid, or like you want to vomit, if it makes you frustrated or triggers an instant lash out in hatred response, that's not your inner teacher. Your inner teacher does not cause you to feel awful. Instead, your inner teacher engenders peace. It engenders joy and certainty, those feelings that we sometimes have that rise to conscious awareness where we're just supposed to do something. Or it could be a thought that pops into our mind that we know is true. That came from our inner teacher. Something that is certain, that induces in us feelings of joy and confidence, certainty, clarity, love, boundless joy, a sense of limitlessness. That's our inner teacher. So it could come in a number of different ways. And what we do is we relax and trust that our inner teacher has our back, so to speak. Our inner teacher is inner. That's why we emphasize inner. This is the part of our mind that is a communication link between our separated little ego self and God. Like a bridge, if you want to see it that way. I mean, the Holy Spirit in A Course in Miracles goes by many different names. The voice for God is just one of them. The Holy Spirit's also a communication link, the answer with a capital A, the universal inspiration. That's an interesting one, isn't it? Universal, everyone. Inspiration, getting an intuitive hit that you just know is the right thing to say and do. The universal inspiration. So while you're learning to relax and trust, something worth mentioning is giving yourself some love. We're our own harshest critics, aren't we? So having grace for yourself is very important. Forgiving yourself is very important. Yes, it's true that when you forgive someone else, you're forgiving yourself because there is no separation of any kind. It's very, very important from a practical standpoint to concentrate sometimes on forgiving yourself. Really, forgive yourself for dreaming this. Forgive yourself for dreaming this confusion, and release it to your inner teacher. When I forgive, I actively say this in my mind. I release this to you, Holy Spirit, whatever it is. I release it. What happens is, well, your inner teacher deals with it. How? Not by crushing it or opposing it in any way, but simply shining the light of truth on it, and it's gone, as though it were never there, because it was not. There has never been any separation, and there is not now any separation. All of the apparent separation that we see in this world is complete illusion, including the world itself. So it's very important that we cultivate this relationship with our inner teacher and learn to relax and trust. All right. So I hope that this has been of help to you. So in wrapping up here, I want to say a couple of things. Number one, please keep the questions coming. I very much appreciate it. This is what I am here to do, is to help and to serve as a guide for you. So when something lands, it's your inner teacher speaking to you. And perhaps that has happened several times over the course of the last 20, 25 minutes. And I hope that is the case. But there's something to bear in mind as we go forth in the world and open up our email account and and scroll through everything, thinking, oh God, what can I delete next? How many of these messages, these 25 messages, can I get rid of at once and not have to open? And all of the things that happen in life. Spirituality is all about practical experience. So we practically cultivate the relationship with our inner teacher and learn to listen to the call, which goes out to all of us all the time. It's the call to awaken. It's the call to return home, if you prefer to think of it that way. We are home in God. We're simply awaking to that reality, truth. We allow truth to be just as it is. I invite you to please keep the questions and comments coming. Not only are you benefiting yourself, you're also benefiting innumerable people throughout space and time. Part of the beauty of modern technology is this is archived on YouTube and can be watched by anyone, anywhere, at any point in time. Your question could be the thing that spurs someone else on to rapid awakening, and that's a beautiful thing. So if you have continued questions, please feel welcome to ask them, and we'll stop going through the text moment to moment, paragraph by paragraph, from time to time to address issues just such as this, because this is a very, very important question on the path. So I thank you to all of you who have asked the question. Now, if you have not subscribed yet, I invite you to do so. That's the subscription button. That's the red arrow in the corner. Go ahead and click that. We'd love to have you join us. And if you have further questions or comments, please feel welcome to reach out. Right here is just a very, very good spot, right here in the comment thread on YouTube. So thank you so much for joining me and for all of your effort and dedication in practice, which is, by the way, the single most important offering you could ever make to anyone, anywhere, is your practice, your forgiveness, your extension of love to the Son of God, your extending the miracle to the Son of God is the single most important offering you could ever make, greater than any kind of service in the world, and much more important than money. It's your commitment and dedication to spiritual practice. So for that, I thank you so much. And I will talk to you again soon.